The things that we take at face value are often infused with hidden meanings. This is true in the movies we watch, the books we read, and this is also true of our day to day universe. Today, we're going to talk about how these symbols may be showing up in your life, maybe in very significant ways, and how you can use them to navigate through life's journey. This podcast is all about helping you with your spiritual growth so you can overcome obstacles and manifest your destiny, to crystallize and materialize any dream, basically, to have success on life's journey. It's all about getting unstuck by unlocking your hidden power. So let's get started. Hi there, and welcome. My name is Remy, like Do Re Mi. I'm a best-selling author and creator of the Get Unstuck Revolution. I help extraordinary women just like you dissolve the obstacles in your path so you can bring success to you. Now let's get started with today's video. Okay, let me jump off the screen here and switch over to my laptop. I first became interested in symbolism when I read Dan Brown's novels, Angels and Demons, The Lost Symbol, Da Vinci Code, and all the others. He's one of my favorite authors. His books appeal to millions of people because these stories remind us that there's more to the world than meets the eye. His books are filled with history, secret codes, and symbols that are embedded in paintings, churches, monuments, and buildings. The things that we take at face value are often infused with hidden meanings. And this is also true of our universe. It's filled with hidden meanings, illusions, and symbols that our angels and guides use to help us along our journey. Today, we're going to talk about how these symbols may be showing up in your life and how you can use them to navigate a successful life journey. If you'd like to see success in full abundance along life's journey, and if you're wanting to tap into a greater knowingness and align with the higher consciousness of your infinite self instead of the lower ego thinking that pushes success away, then this is for you. It's time to be unabashedly, unapologetically, happily untethered to ego thinking. It's time to align with the higher energies of our soul's path instead. This episode is for you if you wonder, what is the difference between the common spiritual symbols and the ones intended for us personally? How can we interpret the signs and symbols that we may be getting? And this is for you if you wonder, is each symbol prompting you to ask something specific? Yes, these episodes are about how to find your hidden power when you want to transform challenges into successes. I like to call it the audacity of alchemy. Because when we're feeling stuck, it's never the situation that has us stuck. It's our energy about it that's become stuck in anxiety, overwhelm, doubts, worries, frustrations, indecision, and even anger. And often this is because of a spiritual injury that we've experienced, some kind of hidden trauma. So it isn't the pain of the situation, it's the pain of not being connected in the natural energy of who we really are, of being connected to that magical part of us that's a creative vibrational being who can use positive energies to create what we want and bring it into physical manifestation. We can allow our manifestations to materialize and not get stuck in the negative vibrations that block them, especially when we're connected to these signs and symbols that are all around us. We talk about these positive energies every week because this is where we find the magic of alchemy. Because our choice of frequency, our choice of those positive thoughts and emotions that keep us connected to the higher universe, well, that changes the course of our journey. Our choice of positive thoughts are important, of course, but that's an outflow of energy when we're thinking positive thoughts. We also have an inflow from the universe we receive. We may receive messages directly or even visions, and we may also receive messages in the form of symbols. Now, when we look up the meaning of the common spiritual symbols around us, we'll see things like the flower of life. It's a visual that represents the energetic force that flows through all of life. It's also found in nearly every major culture around the world. And I have an image up on the screen for you here, and you'll see that this symbol has evenly spaced circles within a larger circle, and this represents the importance of sacred geometry in the universe. Now, another common symbol is the lotus flower. It represents spiritual development, enlightenment, and perseverance. And this is because, in spite of taking root in muddy river beds, this flower still flourishes and blooms. It's amazing that something so gorgeous begins life in such a dirty and dark place. Yet, the deeper and darker the mud, the more radiant the lotus flower will be. Such a great metaphor, don't you think? So there are a handful of common spiritual symbols, and you can Google this phrase and find all kinds of images like these that I'm showing you here. These symbols are intentionally placed in literature and artwork and videos, but what about the common symbols that we see in our everyday life? What about those? Well, for instance, the butterfly. We know that the butterfly symbolizes change and transformation. If we see a monarch butterfly, it can mean resurrection. If we see a white butterfly, this often represents purity. And so it's sometimes a sign to say, open your heart and listen because your angels are trying to guide you. We often hear about white butterflies with our loved ones who have passed on and they want to make their presence known. So, white butterflies are often a direct connection to spirit. Seeing a white dove often means there's a message for us because doves are messengers. And so pay attention to what's happening. And this brings me to a story. I think you're going to love this one. A couple of years ago, I was out at a summer concert just dancing and enjoying the music. And toward the end of the evening, I was thinking it might be time to head out and beat the traffic. But I heard a voice inside that said, wait. So I stayed for another couple of songs, danced a little bit more, started to leave, but then I heard the voice again and it said, wait. Before I knew it, the band announced that they were playing the last song in the evening, and it turned out to be Lady Antebellum's Need You Now. Do you remember that song? Well, I didn't think too much about it, except that now it was the end of the night and I'd be caught in traffic for sure. But on my way home, the same song came on the radio as I was driving home. So I was listening to the lyrics, and there's a part that caught my attention where it says, it's a quarter after one, I'm all alone, and I need you now. So I'm running through my mind who in the world might need me, and I'm just a block from my house, and a white dove danced across my windshield. At 9 o'clock at night, this happened. Well, that caught my attention. So I got home and I Googled spiritual meaning of white dove, and it said to pay attention because a dove is a messenger. And of course, my first thought was that it might have something to do with that song. But who was needing me now? And was I supposed to call them at a quarter after one? Well, I didn't know what to do about this. And then the next day, I found myself at the grocery store and learned from somebody that I knew around the neighborhood that a very dear friend of mine had to have emergency surgery. And apparently, that's why I kept hearing the voice that said, wait, only to hear the song that said, I need you now, only to see a white dove dance across my windshield so I'd pay attention, only to find out it was a message that a friend needed me. Crazy, right? Well, welcome to my world. So we get these symbols around us all the time if we'll pay attention and if we can decipher them. And deciphering them is sometimes the more difficult part. So I want to give you a very practical exercise that may help you to break this down. I often say to pare your story down to bullet points, down to a short paragraph, down to smaller bullet points, just to get the story out of it. And that's what we want to do, is to take the story out of the story. Now, in my story about the dove, I could have talked about the summer heat. I could have talked about the traffic, the different music that I danced to that night, and how I don't like to drive at night. But really, the bullet points were that I kept hearing the message to wait, that I heard the song Need You Now, not once but twice, and the dove, which is a symbol that Spirit was trying to send me a message. And these are the bullet points. These are the symbols that we're looking for outside of the story. Make sense? All right. So from here, we have some options. Once we've identified what our symbols are, we can free associate the meaning that these things have for us, because Spirit will try and use symbols that are familiar for us. So we can free associate. We can take the symbol and Google it. For instance, I could Google spiritual meaning of a white dove. We can use a dream dictionary, which is full of symbols and their meanings. And my favorite dream app, by the way, is called Dream Moods. Dream Moods. And it has a very good search engine in it. And we can also Google metaphors or even use a thesaurus. But it all starts by boiling our situation down to bullet points. And what I'll often do is boil something down to a little short paragraph, and then simply highlight the significant nouns. And that's what you're looking at here on the screen, those three significant points to the story. So, whatever you might be going through right now, or even if you've gone through something in the recent past that still hasn't resolved, I'd like you to write it down into a short paragraph and then do the same thing. Narrow it down just to some bullet points or highlight the nouns. So, I'll give you a real world example. I had a client, his name was David. I've changed his name to protect the innocent. Now, he liked to go to the lake every summer with his wife and his kids. And this one particular summer, though, he had an accident. He was clearing some rope from one of the propellers of their boat. And so he would go under the water, he would do a little work, and then he'd come up from air and then go back down. And he began to feel the effects of carbon monoxide poisoning. And he said this might have been because the boat had been running in a cove where they were going to tie off an anchor. And he thinks that the carbon monoxide might have been floating on the surface of the water. So every time he came up to take a big gulp of air, well, it was contaminated air. So anyway, he began to feel disoriented and lightheaded, and so he quickly pushed off to get away from the boat. But because he was already disoriented and didn't realize it, he actually hit his head on the boat. It knocked him out, and he slipped down beneath the water and silently drowned. His family realized something was wrong. In a matter of minutes, he figured between 4 and 8 minutes. And because they were in a cove rather than in the middle of the lake, they found him very quickly at the bottom of the sandbar. So that was what he called miracle number one, that they were in shallow waters where he could be found. So his sister in law jumped in. She was trying to drag him out. He was completely unconscious. He said, dead weight. And his son realized that he had mistakenly grabbed the wrong backpack from the house. And this wrong backpack was actually his junior lifeguard backpack. His son had literally just completed his lifeguard training a couple of weeks before. And David called this miracle number two. As they were doing CPR on him there in the sand, he went into convulsions. Can you imagine? Well, he was ultimately airlifted to the hospital, but went into cardiac arrest on the way there. They got him back to consciousness, but then he started reacting violently, and so they had to induce a coma. When they tried to bring him out of the coma, he didn't respond. So they were talking to his wife about donating his organs, and they thought it was the end of the line for him. But 2 days later, he came to. He had 3 hyperbaric chamber treatments. He spent some time in ICU and then was released. He had a few challenges because of the blunt trauma to his head, but eventually and rather quickly made a 100% recovery. Quite a story, right? Well, the question he had for me was, what's my mission in life? Because he kept thinking he had unfinished business or an unfinished mission, and perhaps that's why he survived. And so we took his story, boiled it down to a paragraph, and then highlighted the nouns. And I'll put these here on the screen for you. The things that he highlighted were accident, lake, rope, propellers, carbon monoxide, head, and drowning. And these were his symbols. And by looking at these symbols, Googling the spiritual meaning of each one, looking at dream symbology, using the thesaurus, and a few things like this, well, here's what we discovered. And by the way, little disclaimer here, this is not intended to be an analysis or any kind of diagnosis, but this exercise is merely a jumping off point to gain new insights or to begin self-reflection. That's the purpose here. And so this is what you'll do for your own story. Look for a place to start meditating or do some self-discovery, and your symbols are often that jumping off point, because symbols only mean what they mean to you. And the universe or your soul will use these symbols as a way to communicate with you. So anytime you look at symbology in this way, what the symbols mean to you is what's most important. I'm just using David's experience as an example here, something that you can see kind of how this works. So I have a little cheat sheet for you on these symbols, and you'll see that together the symbols are telling a story of their own. And let me put this on the screen for you. All right, so we have, here are the symbols, and what I've highlighted here are his meaning, what he got from the symbol. So when we find ourselves in an accident, generally, it often happens because of pent-up guilt that we're subconsciously pushing ourselves to get beyond, not proud of something we've done, perhaps an error or mistake, or we've been heading in the wrong direction. Now, with this accident, if we experience a death or a near death, this could be our own relationship with the person that we used to be, the person that we were being, and our desire to let go of that relationship with ourselves to allow a new part to emerge. So these are the common meanings of being in an accident. Now, for David, he felt like a new part of his psyche was trying to emerge now that his kids were grown and getting ready for college. So that was the meaning that he highlighted. Now, to have an accident at a lake, because the lake is our second symbol here, to have an accident at a lake rather than a car or a bicycle or an accident at home, well, the idea it happened at a lake is very telling. It signifies our emotions. We may feel restricted and that we can't express our emotions freely. They've become a burden, or we haven't had the space or room to explore what's under the surface. So the lake may also indicate our desire for solace, security, peace of mind. Now, for David, what he wanted to highlight was this idea of exploring what's under the surface. That made the most sense to him. So, can you see how there's a story unfolding here by highlighting what's important to you, what the symbol means to you? This is what you'll want to do with your own story and your own symbol. So, our next symbol is the rope. A rope usually represents connection and attachment to others, but it could also be a connection to self. A rope is usually symbolic of what's holding your or our relationships together, or that we feel bondage, restriction, captivity. Being tangled up or tied up in ropes can sometimes mean that we've either been letting our heart guide us in spite of our better judgment, or just the opposite, that we need to let our heart guide us and let go of logic. Now, for David, he knew he needed to let go of logic. That's what the symbol meant for him. Now, our next symbol, the propellers, that symbolizes forward movement and progress and often a spiritual journey. So, can you see here how the message that he is to receive is beginning to unfold? We're starting to see a pattern here. So, you'll want to look at your symbols and what the hidden messages are and what the patterns are as well. Our next symbol is carbon monoxide. That often indicates a situation in our life that we were having difficulty getting a handle on. There might be something that we need to get rid of in our life that's causing us distress, something that needs to be cleansed and purged to get the negativity away from us. There's a person or a situation that's harmful to our well being, perhaps bringing us feelings of bitterness, jealousy, or other negativity that tends to consume us. Now, for David, he knew instantly and exactly who that person was. Now, the next symbol is our head. And so hitting our head can represent knocking some sense into ourselves. Something has been heavy or weighing us down, causing us to overthink or overanalyze. We're maybe not seeing the obvious. And this has prevented us from moving forward, that propeller action. So there's something that we want to get ahead of. And we know this intellectually and rationally, but we haven't been able to get our head around it. We may need a new perspective or to think with our heart instead of our head. So, in all this meaning around this particular symbol for David, he felt like the universe had been trying to get his attention for quite some time. He knew all the situations that had been leading up to this accident, and he was stubbornly ignoring everything. So, maybe you can relate. And then, lastly, our last symbol here is drowning. And that is a symbol of emotions and feeling overwhelmed. And see, we've got this pattern with emotions here in our heart, right? And so, with this symbol of drowning, sometimes repressed issues may be haunting us. We may be too deeply involved in something that has been beyond our control, perhaps representing a sense of loss in our own identity. We may either be proceeding too quickly in trying to discover our subconscious thoughts rather than slowing down for the time and space that we need for self reflection. Or maybe we're attempting to drown our emotions so that we don't have to deal with them. We have a desire to differentiate who we really are and not to be lost in an identity that doesn't fit us anymore. So, drowning also symbolizes an emotional rebirth. In surviving, it means that we're waking up to a situation and that we'll ultimately survive the turmoil that has been below the surface. That's what happens during an emotional rebirth. We wake up and then we're drawn to the situation that's been below the surface. All right, now for David, these symbols that I have on the screen here are just a summary of what these mean for him. And so this became his cheat sheet. You'll want to develop something similar for yourself. And like I said, this is not intended to be an analysis or any kind of diagnosis, but this is merely a jumping off point to gain new insights or to begin self reflection. There may be a lot of layers, or it may just be a jumping off point for a next pattern of thoughts. Okay. Now, a question to ponder after any kind of trauma: who am I now? Or who do I want to become? Or who am I becoming? And these symbols that we receive sometimes are prompting us to ask these questions: who am I now? Or who do I want to become? Or who am I already becoming? That's what these symbols are often prompting us to ask ourselves. All right. Well, hopefully, this story and the experience that David went through will help you as you explore your own symbols and what's showing up in the physical world around you. These experiences that we go through aren't intended to take us down, they're intended to wake us up. They're intended as messages to help us navigate what we're going through as we grow into more and more of who we really are. So, we want to be sure that we're keeping a positive perspective on things and looking for the good within these symbols and within these messages. As we empower ourselves with these tools toward our self expression of who we are at our core and who we're becoming, without the negative emotions of ego interfering and pushing everything down below the surface, well, we're choosing a higher frequency, higher and better thoughts, because our choice of frequency, our choice of more positive emotions, keeps us more connected to our higher self and to the universe. And this changes the course of our journey. So, reflecting back on everything we covered today, how can you apply what you've learned? The things that we take at face value are often infused with hidden meanings. These symbols may be showing up in your life, maybe in very significant ways, and you can use them to navigate through life's journey. Well, I hope this helps you as you're using the powers of alchemy to transform challenges and obstacles into positive new successes. This podcast is all about helping you have success on your spiritual growth journey. It's all about getting unstuck by unlocking your hidden power. If you still can't get your head around what's got you stuck, you can tell me about it. You can send me a question to questions at unlockyourhiddenpower.com. Or you may not know that you can schedule a one-on-one session with your own personal unstuckologist, that's me, by visiting instantbreakthroughsession.com. This private session is designed to help you tap into your greatest resource, that's you, and together we can make quite a team toward calling in the transformational powers of alchemy. In our time together, we'll uncover your single biggest stuck point, the one you can't see, and we'll also go over the most genius way to create clarity so you can just move forward while one obstacle after another is obliterated. And we'll create a strategy to get you moving in a really good direction, the one that's aligned with your life purpose. If this sounds like a match made in heaven, you can hop on over to instantbreakthroughsession.com right now and book the time slot that works best for you. Well, thanks for joining me today, and I'm wishing you a life filled with all the alchemy you need to bring success to you. Feel free to share this video with anyone you know who's feeling stuck, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.